Thank you for joining us on Coffee Break, brought to you by the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, or M4A. M4A is a part of a network of 13 area agencies on aging that cover all 67 counties across the state. We are located in Alabaster, and we cover Blount, Chilton, Shelby, St. Clair, and Walker counties. We would love to find out how we can help your family today. For previous episodes of Coffee Break, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and kick things off. And if anybody joins us later, just be mindful that we are recording this, so you can always you refer back to it if you need to. This is session number 11 of our Coffee Break series, which is a brief respite for caregivers that's offered by the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, also known as M4A, located here in the central region of Alabama, specifically in Alabaster, Saginaw area. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off as a kind of an introduction to Coffee Break. If this is your first time reaching us or watching some of our videos with this presentation series, it is a collaborative effort between two of our in-house programs at the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging. Those two programs being the PANDA Project, which is providing Alzheimer's and dementia assistance, as well as our traditional caregiver support program, our Alabama Cares program, that is offered all throughout the state of Alabama. PANDA specifically offered in our Shelby County region here in the central part of Alabama. We will be going over who M4A is a little bit more in depth, as well as some of our other programs that might be beneficial for caregivers later on in this presentation. Did want to kind of make a disclaimer beforehand, as well as some I guess you could call them housekeeping rules. If you have any questions beforehand, feel free to drop those in the chat window, as well as there's a Q&A box, and you can also add those either now or later to our Facebook feed as well as our YouTube feed, and we can certainly get an answer to those questions and get a response back to you, whether that be today or later on. So, all right, so on today's episode of Coffee Break, we are joined by Miss Janice Hall and Miss Dani Reams, who are both with the Extension Office throughout the state of Alabama. They cover two regions, and I'm going to pass it on to them. I'm sure you guys are really going to, if the pictures last week, if you joined us, or excuse me, with the last session of Coffee Break, if the pictures of the jam didn't draw you in, I don't know what else will. So I'm going to pass it on to them and kind of give them an overview of who they are, who they represent, and what they're bringing to us today. So I will stop sharing my screen now and pass it over to you, ladies.
Good afternoon. My name is Dani Reams, and I'm a regional extension agent with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System for food safety and quality. We teach everything from produce safety for commercial growers and serve safe for restaurants to home food preservation classes and hand washing demonstrations at schools. So my area is Calhoun, Clay, Cleburne, Randolph, Talladega, Tallapoosa. I've forgotten one. Anyway, if you ever have any questions and you're in those areas, or even if you're not, I'll be happy to speak with you. I will be manning the chat today if there are any questions. Miss Janice is in a different location due to COVID, and she's actually going to be doing the demonstration.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Janice Hall. I'm also a regional extension agent with the Alabama Extension System. So glad to have you on today and to teach you how to do your very own very jam, and it's going to be amazing. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I am based in Autauga County. That's where my home office is, but I also cover 9 counties. I cover primarily 5 of those: Autauga, Elmore, Montgomery, Chilton, and Lowndes are my 5 primary counties, but I also cover Jefferson, Bibb, St. Clair, and Shelby County. So Angela Treadaway primarily covers those northern counties. So we share the region, and we go out and we do, just like Dani said, we train and we do workshops, and we've been doing that virtually, and it's been working out pretty well since then. So Today we're going to get started so we can have some fun making jam. Berry jam is one of my favorites. I was thinking, oh, what can I show them that will be so much fun that they can actually do at home? And we normally have canning equipment and big pots, but I wanted to tone it down just a little bit because everyone may not have those big canning pots that we do our workshops in, and actually show you a practical way to do it at home with just the things that you would have in your home. So I'm going to walk you through, and then we're also going to be teaching you, and Dani's going to jump in every now and then and kind of give some tidbits on canning as we go through the process. So we're actually going to go from start to finish and make jam. So this is something that you can do at home pretty quickly, and it's amazing to have throughout the year. So the ingredients that you would actually need, and I'm all ready to save on time, you're going to need berries, and these are, of course, some of my favorite berries, and I've already gone through the process and crushed those berries. And we have blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, and strawberries. And basically, I took this dough blender and went through and crushed those berries up to get them nice and crushed, so that we could start our jam. But I did want to demonstrate. You just go through. Now, you have a food processor, you can use that food processor, and it will work just as well to go through and crush those berries. But I like to do a labor of love, so it just tastes so much better when you go through and do all of the steps. So these are our berries, and basically to do our jam, you would just use a big pot that you would have at home. This is one of my bigger pots that I like to use to make jam. It's pretty deep, as you can see. You want to use stainless steel and not aluminum, because aluminum can cause chemical reactions and things in canning, especially when you have high acid foods, which fruits are in that category of high acid. So basically, we're going to just pour those berries into that pot. And another reason why you would want to have that pot to be nice and deep like that is because when this is cooking, it may splatter a little bit. So that helps to keep you from getting burned if you could have a bigger pot, a deep pot to work with. Now to this, and just to tell you how many cups of berries this is going to be 5 cups of berries in this to make this jam. It's 5 cups of crushed berries, as a matter of fact. Now to get started, we're going to add a teaspoon of butter to our jam, to our berries. It's not jam yet, but we'll get there. But we're going to add a teaspoon of butter. And the purpose of the butter is to keep that jam from foaming when you do get to the point where it's turned into jam. So it cuts down on the foam. If you did not add the butter in the pot with the berries, you will probably lose about a whole cup of jam at the end. It'll be foam that you will skim off. But you know what? My family likes the foam too. So it's usually something that we can eat pretty quickly. Now, let me tell you what I'm doing now. So to these berries, we're going to add pectin. Now this is, and we don't support a brand name, but this is Sure Gel pectin. Ball makes pectin. Mrs. Wages make pectin. There are all different brands out there. This is one that I just like to use because I always say it is, you're sure to get a gel with Sure Gel. But I like this one. So this is the one that I tend to use the most. But you want to use pectin. Now there are some low sugar, no sugar versions of pectin, which means you can use less sugar or you can use an alternative sugar for your pectin. But basically, you just take that whole box, and I'll tell you a little bit more about pectin once I get this on the stove so we can get it cooking. But so we added our pectin, and I'm just going to turn around here, and I'm going to put this on the stove, and we're going to just let that start to simmer just a little bit. And what we want to happen with the fruit, the butter, and the pectin is we want it to come to a rolling boil of a simmer for the first round, a simmer for about a minute. And then we're going to add our sugar. So we'll show you that process. So we're going to let this heat up. I have it on high heat because we don't want to go slow in the process of making jam. the longer it cooks, the more you will kill your pectin, and your pectin is actually going to be your best friend because it helps to gel your jams and your jellies. There are liquid pectins that you can use that make your jellies, if you're going to make jelly, it will make it a lot more clear. So it's a lot, but you can use either one. You can use the powder or the liquid. It's up to you. And there are recipes that come with each box of pectin. So I'm actually using the recipe that came out of the box. And it has recipes for all different kinds of jams and jellies and the step-by-step cooking instructions for each one of those. So you want to just kind of make sure you're following those recipes. That is really important. Another cookbook that we offer through the extension system is our home food preservation cookbook. And it actually has a lot of different recipes, not just for jams and jellies, but all different kinds of canning methods, from pressure canning all the way down to freezing, even fermenting and drying. So there are a lot of different recipes in this book. So if you're interested in it, you can contact one of us and we can get you in touch with the county office that is closest to you to get these cookbooks. They run about $6, okay? So now what I'm hearing behind me on the stove is our fruit is starting to bubble a little bit. So I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a stir to make sure that it is not just overdoing itself over here. But like I said, we want it to come to just a simmer when it is just starting to incorporate that extra pectin. Now, while that is happening, and I'm just going to kind of be back and forth over here, just kind of giving it a stir. Pectin, that's our best friend, right? Because it helps to gel your food. So when you're picking out your fruits, one of the things to consider, and I'll bring this a little bit close so that you can see it, is the type of fruit that you're using. You want your fruit to be ripe, but not overripe. For example, this strawberry is just the right type of strawberry that you would use to make jam, even if you were just making regular strawberry jam. Because if you look here, that green part up under the top of that strawberry, that's where the pectin is. I know, right? No one knew that, right? You probably did. But that's where the pectin is. So if you have this on the fruit when you're starting to make your jam, that gives you a little bit extra to ensure that you get a gel. Because I tell you, it is a lot to go through the process of washing those berries and cutting them up, or first going and picking the berries, washing them and cutting them up, to only go through all of this, what we're about to learn today, to get to the point where your gel, it doesn't gel. And then you're calling, my jam didn't gel, my jelly didn't gel. What did I do wrong? Well, it could have been the pectin. Might have been old, so you want to check the expiration date on the pectin. This is some that doesn't expire. I'm going to bring it up so you can see. That doesn't expire to 2022. So you want to make sure that you're checking the expiration date. That's one of the reasons why it would not gel. Another tip that I want you to really remember, this makes one batch of jam. When you're using the pectin, it makes one batch, but you want to make sure that you do not double batch this, because if you double batch, that will not gel. It won't gel. So you won't get a set. You'll have a liquid. Basically, you'll have syrup. So you want to make sure that you are doing one batch at a time. Now, we'll say this. If you find a recipe out of your cookbook and it does not, there's different recipes where you can use pectin or not use pectin. But if you don't use pectin, if you have a recipe where you're not using a pectin, you can actually double batch in those cases. But if you're using a pectin, do not double batch because it will not gel. Okay, when I say double batch, I mean do 2 batches at one time. Okay, so right now, our strawberries, oh my goodness, I wish Zoom would have some type of device where you could smell when things are cooking through your screen, because this is smelling so amazing. When we have our face-to-face workshops, it just smells up the room, and we usually have biscuits, y'all, to sample. But we don't have biscuits today since we don't have an audience, well, except my family, but we can get biscuits later. But anyway, so we're gonna just keep letting this keep going. And I just want to, I'm gonna just let you look into the pot. So we're just going to take the camera and we're going to bring it over here so that you can actually see how this is starting to bubble, okay? And I'm going to time this for 1 minute. So I've set the timer on the stove, and you can see how it's just kind of bubbling and simmering. So we're gonna let that go for about 1 minute. We got about 50 seconds left. And the purpose, again, for you to make sure that you are not overcooking this or cooking it too long, because if you do, it will just not be favorable for you or pleasant. Okay, so I'll stop. Y'all can kind of just still kind of look in that pot and see. We got about 25 seconds. Do we have any questions out there, Dani?
No, we don't seem to have any questions, Janice.
Okay, all right. Well, this is still popping and going over here, so we can see how it's just coming along very, very nicely. And we'll just keep stirring. All right.
I think everybody's too mesmerized.
Now,
I think everybody's too.
Is we're going to add our sugar. Now we have 6 cups of sugar that has been measured out. So we're going to dump that sugar into those berries. Check it out, y'all. Look at that. Amazing, with a capital A and a capital G. All right. See how it's all coming together? So we're just going to stir that for just a second. Now, what's going to happen in this process is this jam, almost jam, the berries and the sugar, we're going to bring this to a rolling boil. Now, a rolling boil, I'll show you, is a boil that when you stir it, it keeps boiling. That's very important. You want to make sure it gets to that process, because if you don't, what will happen is your jam may not gel, okay? And we're going to time it after it comes to that rolling boil. We're going to time it for 1 minute. 1 minute, okay? So we're just going to kind of, I like to just kind of stir it. I just like to stir it a little bit and just kind of let it settle for a little bit, and then just stir it a little bit more, just like that, okay? All right. It smells so good. It is beautiful. That is such a beautiful color for the jam. And I can hear it starting to rumble a little. Okay. Are y'all hungry yet? I think Jeremy said, oh, this is not the day. I'm very hungry before the even workshop starts. So
I think the rumbling is my stomach.
Uh-oh. Oh.
So while the jelly is getting to a boil, I'll throw this in because I have this question in a lot of my classes, and that is that somebody who doesn't make jam, but maybe their grandparents did, they want to know if using paraffin as a sealant is still considered okay. And that is actually something that is not recommended now. Used to, they would use that wax and you might get mold on the top of the jelly and people would just scrape that off, but they have found that some of those molds create mycotoxins, and those have been shown to cause cancer in animals. So the purpose of the water bath canning is to kill that mold, because the mold could grow in the sugary environment. So we water bath can so that we can kill that mold and not have those issues with those mycotoxins, and we do not recommend using paraffin.
That's a good point. Thank you, Dani. Thank you. Awesome. So check it out, everybody. Do you see how it's boiling? Do you see how it's boiling? Okay. So now we're going to let it come to a rolling boil. So this is really important step. So a rolling boil, again, is a boil that when you stir it, it doesn't go away. So it's at a rolling boil because I'm stirring it. See how I'm stirring it, and it's still going strong. That is a rolling boil. And sometimes it will pop, I will be honest. So you have to kind of be very careful. Sometimes I'll even wear an oven mitten on my hand just to kind of protect my hand a little bit. All right. It's really going, but it smells so good. We got about 30 seconds. Now, you do not want this to keep going and going and going, because if you do, guess what? When it does sit or set, I guess you could say, what will happen is it'll be so hard, you can't get a knife through it. Guess what? When I was learning how to make this early on, years and years ago, that happened to me. I made some and I say, oh, you couldn't. It could not be ready already. I'll let it go a little longer. Well, guess what? It actually was overcooked and it was hard as a brick. So we're at 1 minute. I'm going to remove it from the stove. And we're going to put it on the heating pads. There we go. And we're going to turn our stove off back there. Okay, now let's talk about jars for just a minute. So now I have my jars here, my canning jars, and we'll just let that settle down for a little bit. So I have my canning jars here, and it's really important that you make sure that you're using the right type of canning jar for the recipe. So the recipe will actually give you the type of jar that you should use and tell you how long you should process it. Now I'm going to demonstrate about processing in just a minute. Right here we have our water bath canner going, and this step is going to be very, very important. You're going to have to take it through that water bath canning process in order to draw that air out of that jar and seal it. Now, I know some people will say, well, I get a seal. My jars pop when I'm actually putting the hot liquid into the jars, but that's not processing it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So what I have done with my jars, I've actually gone through, I took them through the dishwasher, and so they're clean and sterilized, but I went an extra step to put them in the oven, and putting them in the oven let me just tilt that a little bit, but you don't want to do that yet because it'll burn your mouth. We don't want to burn our mouths, do we? Okay, so we got our jars. This is a funnel. You can buy these kits at Walmart and some department stores, and this actually helps you to make your canning life easier. But so this is really helpful because it helps you to get the product into the jar really easy. So basically what you would do is take that funnel, put it in that jar, and we're using half-pint jars today. And I have another one that's kind of like a little bit more than a half-pint, but it's really pretty because I know we like to make jams and jellies and things and give them out as Christmas gifts. That's really sweet. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to ladle this jam into the jar. Now I'm using an ice cream scooper, but I'm going to show you where you can use a ladle. It doesn't matter. You just want to get it in the jar. You just want to get it in the jar. All right. So with jams, headspace is very important. And I know I'm giving y'all a lot of information, but guess what? It is all in that cookbook and on our website. Dani, can you tell them the website while I get transition a little bit?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Our website is www.aces.edu, and I will put that in the chat. Another good resource is the National Center for Home Food Preservation, and you can just put that into your search engine. It'll probably be the first one that pops up. They have a lot of incredible links for home food preservation.
Thank you, Dani. Awesome. So now I am filling these jars, and with jams and jellies, you want a 1/4 inch headspace. So a 1/4 inch, y'all, is almost at the tippy top. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a minute. But let's get our jam into these hot jars. You want to make sure that you go from hot to hot to hot when you're canning. You don't want to put hot liquid in a cold jar. It'll slow down the process. So you want your jars to be hot. You want your liquid to be hot when you are doing it. Okay, so we want a 1/4 inch headspace. It looks like I may be nailing it so far. I'm using my ladle now. I wanted to show you both techniques of using an ice cream scoop or a ladle or whatever you have at home would work just fine. So I am getting this into the jars and it's so pretty. All right, let's go to the next one. So with the headspace, the reason why you want to make sure you're following that headspace recommendation is because that recipe was processed with so much air in that jar. And if you don't fill it to the headspace as recommended, you may actually under-process that jam. And if it's not processed correctly, like I'm going to show you, you can get mold to grow in your jam. And no one wants to eat mold because mold can make you sick. And no one wants to get sick, right? Right. I can tell as I am ladling this, ladle. It's so funny to say. As I'm ladling this into the jar, I can see on the side of my pot how it is starting to gel, which means, and it tells me that I am going to be a happy camper tomorrow, 24 hours later, because I should have a nice set from this jam. It should set pretty nicely. All right, we got this one. So right now I have 6 half pint jars. Now we're going to process these for 5 minutes, but I am going to do my other jar over there. It's a little bit bigger and I may not be able to fill it up. So what happens if you get a jar that's not quite full? It is the first to get eaten the next day if it makes it to the next day. But I am going to put the leftover in that big jar and we will refrigerate it. It will still gel. So we're just going to put those leftovers in there. Perfect. That's about it, y'all. But let me show you. Just look in that pot. Do you see how it's sticking to the sides right here? It is already starting to gel. So that means that it is going to be a nice set. Now, you're not going to get a gel tonight. It's going to take about 24 hours. But you can see how that kind of collected on the side of the spoon. That is a perfect example of your jam setting and coming out the way you like it. Okay? All right.
Hey, I'll interject here really quickly to say that if you are starting with sterilized jars like Janice did, then you can process for the 5 minutes. But if you've not sterilized your jars, then the recommendation is to process for 10 minutes.
That's correct. So if it is something that is going for a little bit longer than that, then a little bit longer than 5 minutes, you do need to sterilize it. Okay. All right, so now what we're gonna do, we have these jars and we have a little bit of sticky on the jar, okay? So we need to clean the sticky off. And I'll come back to the headspace when we get our jars into the canner. But we wanna clean the top of that jar off, but you can kind of tell that these are pretty full, which is what you want. You want them to be almost full. I know when we judge at the fair, I'm not sure if Dani's had an opportunity to do that yet, but we have county fairs and we have people to enter in those fairs. And wow, I tell you, it is amazing some of the things that people are actually canning out there and making for their homes, but you can win money. I always encourage my students that come through the canning classes to make sure that they actually enter their stuff in the fair. You go through that work to do it. You can eat it and enjoy a little bit of cash in the process.
I judged a fair this past weekend and there were some beautiful entries. It was in Cleveland.
Oh, good. Did you? Wow. I didn't even know if they were in town. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take these bands and these lids and we're going to put them on the jars. Now, these bands and lids need to be washed before you use them. And they recommend that you just put them in hot water and just let them simmer. You do not boil them anymore, but you just put them in the water and allow them to simmer. Okay, so we're just take the bands, and the lids are the major thing that you want to make sure that you're getting correctly. Now, I didn't tell you, why do you clean the sticky off? Well, if you don't, it could interfere with your jar sealing. And again, you don't want to go through all of this work and your jar is not sealed. So we're just putting the lids on. Now, when you're putting these lids and bands on your jars, you want to make sure you get them finger tight and not wrist tight. If you put them on and they are finger tight, they're going to process correctly. Okay, I'm going to lift that up. So when I say finger tight, that means you're using your fingers to put it on and not your wrist. Because if you wring it on like this, it's going to be too tight, and then the air won't be able to escape, and your jars may or may not seal. If you are pressure canning, what could happen is your jars could actually buckle. These lids could actually buckle. You might have seen lids before that actually buckled in the process, and that was because those lids were on too tight. So make sure that you're observing the finger tight, not wrist tight, when putting them on. Okay. You see how I'm just kind of finger tight? So it's just kind of catch it and snug it just like that. Okay. Let's just leave that one sitting out. And we're going to put our last one on. Okay. We got it finger tight. All right. And we're going to do this one, and we'll just put it in the refrigerator. Whoops. That one's trying to. There we go. So we'll just sit that one to the side and we'll refrigerate it, and it'll be amazing in the morning. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take it through the process of water bath canning these jars. So the purpose of water bath canning is to draw that air out of that jar, okay? You want to draw out that we had a 1/4 inch headspace, which I'm going to go back and explain that when we get our jars in the canner. But you want to draw that air out of that jar. In order to do that safely and without paraffin, because Dani touched on that being not safe for your health anymore, but you want to do that by water bath canning. So we recommend that you water bath can all of your high acid foods. So your jams, your jellies, they actually should be water bath can. You pressure can low acid foods like vegetables and meats. So you do have to take it through this process. And I know people will say, oh, my grandmother didn't do that. She just put them in the oven. That's not water bath canning, okay? You need to make sure you take it and put it in the canner. It needs to be submerged under the water and have at least 1 to 2 inches of water on top of those jars, on top of those jars, okay? So right here, I just have a big pot. Now you can buy a water bath canner. They have the big black pots with the white specks on it. I had one of those. They even have a stainless steel big pot that you can use, and I have one of those that I use for my workshops, but this is just one that I have at home to cook in. So it works perfect. It's just a big pot. You want to have a rack on the bottom because you don't want to sit these jars directly on the bottom of that pot because they could break. So we have a rack inside of here, and our water is already boiling. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these jars, and using this jar lifter that comes in your kit, we're going to take these jars and we're going to put them in the canner. So let me show you a trick in getting those jars in there so that you don't get any sticky back in between the lid and the top of the jar. you want to lift that jar up, over, and down into the canner. Make sure you don't tip it over, because if you do, it may actually cause a little sticky to get inside your jars. So you want to just line them up in there. And I'm just using a rack that I had from actually one of my pressure cookers, I'm sorry. But I'm gonna get these jars in here. And then people will say, well, what if I can't get all of my jars in at one time? Well, it's okay, because these are only gonna process for 5 minutes. So you can see how the water is starting to rise above those jars. So we're gonna get, I think I can get about 6 in here. Now, if I were to fill it up, I could actually get another set of jars on top, but we're just gonna let these go. And we've got about 1 inch of water on top of those jars. So what we wanna do is cover it, and this has a nice clear lid so we can look down in there. And what is really cool, if you can see it before it steams up too bad, but you can see the bubbles coming out of the jars as it's starting to heat up inside of the canner. And we don't want to start our timing until those jars have actually started to do a rolling boil. Here we go with the rolling boil again. But when this starts to boil, I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes, because we're doing half pint jars, okay? Your pint jars, the recommendation is 10 minutes. So again, that recipe is going to be so important for you to make sure that you are processing those your food with the right canning method and the right time for that method. Okay. Now, we do not recommend, and I can see the water. I can see it. I'm not sure how well you all can see it, but I can see the water is now boiling. So I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes, and it is doing a rolling boil. It's just going and going. Okay. All right, so we'll let that hang out for about 5 minutes. And then we are going to just come back, and I'm going to show you what the, we're gonna just show you, I wanna show you the head space and everything on your jar, and a good way to be able to measure that head space. Okay, Dani, do we have any questions out there?
We do not.
Okay, everybody's quiet today.
If you do decide that you're interested in making jams and jellies, I mentioned the National Center for Home Food Preservation earlier, and I put a link in the chat to their site. They also have a causes and possible solutions for problems with jelly products, which may be helpful starting out. I'm like Janice, my first time around making jelly, I made some that was so hard that I put the spoon in it, and then I had to throw the spoon and the jar away because it wouldn't come out. So it's a really great resource if you have, I mean, they cover formation of crystals, bubbles, soft gels, all kinds of things. It's really good information.
It is. Awesome. I am right there with you in my first experience, but it was a learning experience. So while our jars are processing in our water bath canner for 5 minutes, I just want to show you this canning jar and show you a quick way to determine where those head spaces are on that jar. Okay, so you can use this bottom loop. Now this serves 2 purposes. One purpose is to get the band on. The other purpose is to use it as a guide. So this bottom loop here is a 1-inch head space. This middle loop here is a 1/2-inch head space. And the top one, which is almost at the tip top, is your 1/4-inch head space. So that's actually where you want your jams and jellies to be. Pickles, things like that, maybe 1 inch. It just depends on the recipe and the actual food that you are processing. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, so y'all, we only have about 2 minutes and 23 seconds left for our jam to finish. Wasn't that just super quick? Minus the time for me to wash the berries and crush them, you can go from start to finish and have several jars of jam in just a few minutes at home. So you can do this at home and with stuff that you already have at home without having to go out and buy a lot of equipment. But if you want to go big and go big or go home, then you can actually buy all of the canning equipment and just start canning. I've done pickles and they taste amazing. I've done spaghetti sauce and salsa. Oh gosh, I bought some tomatoes this past weekend, and the tomatoes that I use, I said, oh, these will be perfect for salsa. I know these grew in somebody's garden in the soil. It had that acidity to it that you love in those fresh summer tomatoes, but it would make a wonderful salsa. So we also have on our website, Dani was mentioning, on our food preservation page, we have videos that teach you about the different canning processes as well. So you can look those up if you had any, questions, or always give us a call if you get to the point where you're canning and you want to learn a little bit more or walk you through it. Just call before you start. If you think that you may not understand it, don't wait until you're in the midst of it and call us, because we may be doing another program like this and can't answer the phone and help you. And it's like, help, and we can't help because we got to call you back later. But no worries, we'll try to take care of you if we can. I have this pair of tongs here. I showed you my jar lifter. Reach back and get this. You can buy this in a kit, but guess what? If I didn't have this, I have used tongs before to get those jars out of the canner. So it just depends on what you would like what you have at home or what you don't mind going out and buying and having, just to make your canning life a lot easier. Did y'all hear that? That's our beep. That means our jam is ready. So what I'm gonna do, switch over here, and I turn the stove off, and you can see that it is going, and stop. There we go. So it is still going. I'm gonna let it calm down a little bit. I'll take the lid off so you can kind of see it. Amazing. Isn't that amazing? So now I'm going to take my jar lifter, and we're gonna lift that jar up like that. Don't tip it. It's gonna be so tempting to take that water off the top, but don't do that. So we're gonna lift it up and come over and down onto a towel or some type of soft surface. Okay, some type of soft surface. So lift it up, get a good grip on it, come over and down. We're gonna do our other two jars that we left over there, but we're gonna take care of these and finish up the day with you all. Oh, did you hear that? Okay, so let me tell you what that sound is. That is an amazing, glorious sound to the ears of a canner, a person that cans, because that pop that you heard means that those jars just sealed. And that is like, yay, in our house. So when the jars pop in our house, you can hear it across the house. We all say, yay! So it just pops. So everybody out there that's watching say, yay! All right, we got one more. We're gonna bring it up, over, and down. There we go. And I'm going to turn this back on and put these last two in here. And then we're going to just, whoops, turn over. Yay! Can y'all hear that? Dani, can they hear those pops?
We can hear it, and I'm excited for you.
We're gonna move it back over here, and guess what? So our jam, we got several that have already popped. And if you had a napkin, I know it bugs me too, but if you had a paper towel or a napkin or something like that, you can just take that napkin, because it bugs me to have that water on there. But don't press it, don't force it. You want it to pop on its own, but you can kind of take it and get the rest of that water off There. The quicker picker upper, but this is not a quicker picker upper. It's just working really good. All right, here we go. That one didn't have any water on top. So like I said, don't force it. There we go. And they are ready, y'all. Now, these lids and the bands, now we put them on finger tight. Okay, let me do this one. We put this on finger tight. You saw me tighten it, right? So check this out. It's loose. What has happened is when we processed it in the water bath canner, we sucked the air out of that jar and we're preserving the jam to keep it from molding, okay? Well, what happens is it went in and it vacuumed, which allowed our lids to loosen like that. Now, some people will say, how can we store these? Can we leave the bands on or can we take them off? It is your preference. But I will say this, when we're using it out of the refrigerator, once we open it and get a little bit, it's a new jar, we open it, we'll put the leftovers in the refrigerator. I like to, it's just my preference, I like to have a band on it. But you can store it with or without the band. It is your preference, okay? And you have berry jam in less than an hour. How cool is that, right? It's amazing. Can y'all see how pretty that is? Oh, if you could smell the kitchen right now. Check it out, check it out. All right. Okay, these are boiling, so we're gonna set this for 5 minutes, but we won't worry about taking care of that while we're talking. We'll just take care of those and take them out when they're ready. But that's it. That's all it is. And these will last on the shelf for a year. Okay, will last on your shelf for about a year. And basically that 1 year expiration that we put on the products that are home can is more for quality purposes. Is not so much for food safety, because if you go through and use the correct processing with the correct food, it can last beyond that. It just may not look pretty. And people don't tend to want to eat foods that don't look pretty. I know I made some peach jam one time and gosh, I made a little bit too much that year. Towards the end of the year, we had some jars that were not as pretty as they were towards the end of the year. They had started to discolor, but they were still good. They were still safe to eat and they still tasted fine. So if you're okay with that, then, you know, but we do recommend 1 year to keep anything that's home canned, whether it's jams, jellies, pickles, whatever, vegetables, whatever you do. Just please make sure you do not water bath can your vegetables, okay? That is, you use a pressure canner, which we don't really have time to go into that. But maybe later at another coffee break, we can actually do a pressure canner and show you that method if you wanted to learn how to can vegetables. So that's about it. Any questions out there? Anyone have any questions?
You can unmute and ask your questions.
Yeah, I think with the way we got this set up in a webinar, they're not actually able to do that. But if you do have any questions, of course, drop them in the Facebook comment stream, as well as, again, we're recording this, so we'll be putting this on our YouTube channel as well. So you can also put them on there. You can shoot us an email, which we'll go over at the end with our contact information. But you know, feel free to reach out, even if it's not right now. But like they just mentioned, we do have the QA box as well as the chat module if you're in here with us in the Zoom video to drop any questions, so we can definitely get those answered. But I'm not seeing any. Jennifer, do you see any right offhand off social media at all?
No, not right now.
Okay, and we did make available the resources that Miss Dani mentioned earlier. Those are in the Q&A, or excuse me, in the chat feature. So if you need access to those, we'll probably be commenting those, or excuse me, adding those to our Facebook post once we do that. I will say for myself that I learned a few things today. I learned that Zoom needs a sensory option to smell. I learned what pectin is, and And this really, and I also learned not to do a food coffee break during the lunch hour when you've not eaten lunch yet. So lots to learn. This really takes me back personally. I mean, growing up, I grew up pretty rural in rural Alabama, and my grandmother had an entire room still dedicated to canning, and she canned just about anything that needed canning. So really takes me back, and I some of my favorite childhood memories are fig preserves and fig jam. So this is certainly I could certainly pick up on the smells for sure. It really took me back, but we really appreciate you guys coming on today, and this has been a neat coffee break session, and we know that our viewers will learn a lot from this and have a lot of questions. So once we get those, we'll for sure try to connect them back to you guys, as well as we will be tagging their agency on our Facebook page, so that if you need to contact them directly or kind of get interactive with them in the social world and see what all kind of great events they have going on, because I know that, I mean, it seems like something every week that the extension office is doing virtually. So there's always something to check out. So we thanks again to an excellent presentation, and we really appreciate you guys joining us for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All right,
you.
we're going to move on. We're going to move on now to M4A. We'll keep this pretty brief. We are getting pretty close here to the end of the hour, and rightfully so, because that was an amazing presentation, and I am for sure ready for lunch now. But we will briefly go through who M4A is, what we do, the network that we're a part of, and how you might be able to reach out to us, especially for those new viewers. This is, again, our 11th session of Coffee Break, so this goes all the way back to really whenever the world started getting crazier. We've been doing this for quite a while now. We do these every other week, so we've got kind of a role we've been doing here, kind of ongoing. So the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, also known as M4A, is a part of a network of 13 other local area agencies on aging that cover all 67 counties in the state of Alabama. Again, you can see us there in the central region. We're right here in the the Saginaw/Alabaster region, between Calera and Alabaster. So we cover basically the regions that kind of surround Jefferson County. However, we do also cover Jefferson County for our senior employment program. But simply put, our mission is to empower individuals, people living with disabilities, and their caregivers to self-abdicate, as well as live independently and safely in the communities of their choice. And our motto is simply assisting all ages at all stages. We have a single entry point of what we call the ADRC, where when you contact our agency either by telephone, in person, or through our website, you will be connected to one of these staff members. They're experts in doing screening, benefit screening, what we call them, to really try to serve as a starting point for everyone calling in to try to get resources for families, to really try to improve quality of life for the overall family and the individuals specifically who you're calling on behalf of or calling themselves. To learn more about information about your area, of course, you can call our statewide number at 1-800-AGE-LINE, and they will connect you directly with the office that covers the region that you're in. Some of the key programs that we offer, of course, we do homebound meals programs. We work with the senior centers to provide local nutrition at the senior centers when those are operating under normal working conditions. We also have caregiver supportive services through our Alabama Cares and Panda projects. We have medication assistance, which is coming up pretty soon with open enrollment, those types of questions between SHIP, our insurance counseling, and senior RX. Those seem to be popular times for those to really look at Medicare benefits and see what drugs are covered, what's not. And of course, if they're not, then our senior RX program can step in to really work directly with the manufacturers to do low cost, no cost drugs. And those are both really great programs that not just during open enrollment during the latter part of the year, but also all year, it doesn't hurt just to call and get screened to see what's available. We also do a senior employment program for those looking after a certain age. I believe it's 55, but I don't want to misquote it, maybe 60. But when they get back into if they're looking to get back into the workforce, we partner with nonprofit agencies across the 6-county region for including that program to offer supportive services for those looking to get back into the workforce. We partner with those agencies to provide basically free labor for them as part of our program to really help do some on-the-job training skills to really build the the level something to offer to an employee, and hopefully the ideal goal there is to secure long-term employment. So that's really a great program. We also partner with an elder law attorney to discuss any type of legal assistance. We'll go over that in just a few minutes because that's actually a speaker for an upcoming coffee break. We also do elder abuse prevention initiatives, as well as our two big programs, primarily our Medicaid waiver program that offers in-home services to prevent long-term care entry. And then we also have an in-house ombudsman that will speak on behalf of families, as well as kind of be the mediator between the families and the facility if there happens to be an issue there. Another role as part of being the ombudsman, we also have a program here that transitions individuals from the nursing home facility back into the community through what's called our Gateway to Community Living program. And our local ombudsman also runs that program as well. So lots of stuff going on there. It's really, that's why we make it a single entry point so that you can call, get referred to those programs from making one phone call. So it just makes it a little bit easier for the consumers. You can also, especially important right now with everything that's going on, you can do that virtually through our online, you can go to our website, www.m4a.org/referral. And that will take you to another screen to basically answer the same, pre-questions that you would have if you were to get screened. And then they can take it from there, our ADRC members, to really kind of do the full benefit screening in depth to get you the services that you need to be referred to. Follow us on all of our social media accounts. Again, we're streaming this live on Facebook, but we also have a Twitter account, Instagram page, and of course our YouTube channel, which we record and place all of these videos on. And we do have a newsletter that you can join. If you go to our website, it will prompt you. You really don't have a choice. It's one of those things that hits you in the face when you go to our website. That kind of forces you to either reject it or join it. And we do encourage you to join it because it does have a lot of things that are going on, things like our coffee break, things like community events that the extension office or other organizations may be doing. We can put those in our newsletter to make those in our region aware of stuff that's going on. We do want to go ahead and let you know that our next coffee break is scheduled for September the 9th at 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Same place, same time, different date. That will be 2 weeks from today. And we will be joined by Ms. Jan Neal with the Jan Neal Law Firm to talk about legal issues for caregivers. Can't express how important this one will be. She has of course, she only has an hour to talk about legal services, but I'm sure she's going to really fill us in on a lot of things that we need to know, especially as caregivers need to know for long-term care planning and things, getting your affairs in order, to really make sure that you're covered if things happen, because of course we all are humans and things tend to happen in life that we need to be prepared for as best possible as we can. So we really look forward to having Ms. Jan Neal join us, and we hope you will as well. Here's our contact information. We're, again, located in Alabaster at 209 Cloverdale Circle in Alabaster 35007. That's our physical location, or you can send us a mail at P.O. Drawer 618 Saginaw 35137. And of course, there's our contact information through our telephones and our website. So if you have any questions, you can either send an email to me, jraines, JRAINES at m4a.org, or Panda, PANDA at m4a.org. And we can certainly get information, those questions over to our panelists today to see if we can get those answered for you. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks again to our wonderful presenters today. We really appreciate you guys taking the time, offering a little bit of respite for our caregivers, but also really giving them and myself a really great and informative presentation to kind of carry us deeper into this pandemic, it seems. So maybe this will inspire a few up and coming chefs to carry on the tradition of canning and making some berry jam. So thanks again, and everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.